psychologically, dramatically, that it's really about a culture of success and keeping these folks from failing and going to state prison, except with your proposal, they'd be failing and going to the county jail. And so I think that's an important incentive. Just two responses from you, please, with regard to the knee-jerk reaction, which I hear from just about everybody, but I've never heard it really explained or substantiated, that county jails were not meant for 3 years, they're meant for 12 months. Who says, and what's the difference?
Well, actually, I'm not exactly sure what that means because
there's no programming. It's because there's no programming at county jails.
Right, it's an issue of programming, but as far as physical type of structure, I don't think it changes anything because they house our inmates now. So I think it is about possibly the space of program.
And in many cases, we're not really talking about 3 years with credits. It's
right. Typically, a lot of these inmates, by the time they get to the state system, and I looked at some of the various property crimes, drug crimes, they may only serve, say, 14 months actually in state prison. We do have a slightly different credit earning structure than jails. We have a day-for-day system.
Right. And then the last question for you is your response to the concern of lack of capacity at the county level.
Well, I think because of both physical space and fiscal situation, I think the state and the counties have a lack of capacity. And like I said before, if you look at the system as one, and we end up having to have certain inmates in alternative custody settings or trying to keep people in felony probation where they actually began, that then we actually help the capacity issue. I'll also note that LA program, I'm not sure if it was an annual cost or a per person cost, but it was $7,000 for a 6 to 9 month program. And so I think that type of program is consistent with the dollars that we're talking about.
Actually, another question just came to mind. With the Senate language that restricts the application to drug and property crimes, to what degree does that shrink your universe, and to what degree would that impact the $204.3 million savings?
You know, I actually think we can work within those types of parameters because we were actually thinking of that typical group of crimes that is your property and drug crimes.
So we're on the same page.
Yeah, often when we get these, the correction computer systems, they do their best based on the parameters you put in them, and then we make some certain assumptions. But we're more than happy to work on looking at those population groups.
Thank you.
That'll be part of it. Senator Dutton?
Kind of piggyback on Senator Lindell's question. There used to be a 3-year instead of 1 year in the county facilities. I mean, I don't remember how long ago it changed, but
before I was in law school, Senator Dutton, that was 30 years ago.
I would venture to guess that since the late 70s when we went to determinate sentencing that we have been at that structure to where the base felony was a 2-year felony, and then you could either mitigate it to 16 months or extenuate it to 3 years. So I'm going to guess it was before then.
Yeah, I graduated from law school in '79. That was already the case then.
Senator, when the determinate sentence law passed, one of the things that happened, and liberals and conservatives both supported that for very different reasons. Both lived to rue the day.
Yeah.
But then the set term determinate sentence, that became a function and effect, and about 90% of the inmate population became released under order of law. Then the response here was to lengthen sentences. You know, you didn't do enough time, so now we don't like this crime, and there was all this plethora for decades of extending sentences.
Move
and
to
then,
return to indeterminate sentencing.
Under the determinate, we lengthened the determinate sentence. And then, well, not we, I wasn't here, but then the next response became a slight shift back to more indeterminate sentencing vis-a-vis 1 strike and 3 strikes.
That did become, I mean, it has become, when the parole board had authority to decide. I mean, I think part of the problem as you listen to this debate is that it's about risk, not about the crime. And I don't know where the editorial recently, some paper somewhere, I mean, was talking about and Senator Wright in his floor speech not too long ago, too, on this question of retribution versus risk. And, you know, people just picking a number and deciding we hate this or this person and not thinking about what is the relative risk to the community, where's the public safety thing. And this continuum of probation to felony probation to parole is all part of that continuum. How do you protect the community? But what is the risk of the person versus sort of just the specific nature of the crime? And
there's something more important, though,
Senator Nielsen, sorry, go ahead. Turn on your mic, though.
Just
there's something more important than risk, and that's justice. You have done something. There is a just sentence. The victims in society have cause to believe that justice will be served. Secondarily, then, is risk.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I mean, when you had a parole system, when you had indeterminate sentencing, the issue was, is this person a risk at whatever level? And you could hold them or bring them back and forth depending on what was going on with that. Now you have this, it is 2 years and it is 2 years, and no, you can't change that. And, you don't really get the benefit of that parole business. And Ms. Skinner? Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the not so much the debate, I think, is healthy, but the aspect of the proposals in general, not just this one, that give me some pause is that we're discussing details around a total scoring cut of about $244 million. Do I have that correct? And against CDCR, not letting aside the health issue, right? And here we are in a $18 billion deficit. This is the portion of our general fund that has grown the greatest in the last 10 years and definitely over the last 20. And yet again, maybe any particular approach is very important for us to debate. But to have the debate centered around such a tiny portion of cut with this kind of deficit is what I suppose disturbs me the most. And then we get into, when we'll get next into the discussion around the health care costs, which grew from $800 million to $2 billion. And yes, it was a lot due to a court case, but the judge in ruling is giving us that mandate and forcing us to spend that amount on the health care costs, and is describing it that the increase is a result of overcrowdedness. So in a way, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face, in that we can't get we're not going to be able to get a handle on these costs, whether it's the health care or other, unless we reduce the population. Now, I don't want the public at risk by any means or unsafe, but I think that we certainly deserve to look at again those issues around the sentencing of nonviolent offenders, drug offenders, keeping incarcerated, the medically, people that are completely infirm, things like that are just increasing our costs without really creating a safety to the public. And then if we accept some analysts' point of view that we are less protecting the safety of the public by keeping certain type of offenders in prison, because they get no rehab, they get no ability to improve any education, any ability for them to become functioning in the society again, we have eliminated. So I just think that right now is the time, given our deficit, to be looking at additional ways to try to cut this corrections budget in ways that would protect the safety of our public.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Restructuring, yes.
If I may, just for clarification, our entire budget proposal includes savings of about $2 billion in the corrections area. Obviously, a large chunk of that is in the medical area,
right,
because we admit, and I think the receiver has admitted in this room, that we have a very expensive, inefficient medical system.
Yeah,
but also in the employee comp proposal, which has been one of the major cost drivers in this department, that also saves additional money.
Yeah, well, contract would have saved you money for 4 years, but okay. Senator Lowenthal, and then Senator Huff.
I just have a comment, and it just seems to me, following up on what Assemblymember Skinner said, and also what Assemblymember Nielsen kind of triggered something, and also the LAO about wobblers that should be thought of as really misdemeanors instead of as felonies. I think we're tinkering. I think that basically, going back, that we really need a sentencing commission, and that unless we really stop making judges just clerks and give them the discretion again, we're never going to deal with this issue. If it's just done in the legislature, that's the wrong place to do it, because it's just to enhance sentences, as was put out. Not saying that there aren't times that it needs to be done or not, but I'm saying that's the wrong role, and if we're really interested in changing this, we have to move towards some kind of independent sentencing commission to look at the whole issue of determinate sentencing once more.
Yeah, my colleague on the other side made a comment about corrections are the largest growth in our budget. I would refer back to this LEO handbook handout. Where is it? Right here. And IHSS, developmental services, mental health are the actually fastest growing. If you take dollar-wise,
mental health are largely prisoners.
If you take dollar-wise, it's education and health, and this group has rejected most of the things in these areas. So not that it's...
Court rejected more of them than the legislature.
Well, and frankly, the court is the one that's driven the cost in corrections as well.
Short comment, Madam Chair.
Ms. Skinner? Yes.
The chart that Senator Huff you're referring to is slightly misleading. I always find charts that show bars on percent growth that don't give the dollar amount of the growth. That percent growth, if we actually put dollars next to it, that bar would be very, very different. So yes, your point is true that our education budgets increase more, but if we look at both percent and dollars, the corrections budget wins on both.
Well, it's a caseload budget, and on a caseload basis, prisons haven't gone up on caseload, but they've gone up on cost. IHSS has gone up a lot more on caseload than on anything else.
And I think Medi-Cal's gone up high on both. So
on both. Yeah, Medi-Cal goes up on both because it's both the prison health and the other. All right. I think we have a little sense of discussion here. I mean, obviously, this is a candidate for sort of a larger restructuring discussion, and it's cost shifts to counties, the way finance is proposing it, whether they can handle that, which pieces are appropriate, and how to set up this continuum as we realign juvenile parole, the opportunity to sort of think about the parole, probation intersect, how to do it efficiently. I mean, the program that finance described in San Diego, there's a great program, and you just got to contract with these guys, you know, who are doing great work, not only with community folks, but with parolees, getting them jobs and putting them in work. And, you know, there are a lot of those around the state. I know there's similar ones in Stockton and some other areas. And how do we use those services most effectively in a combination of parole and probation that acknowledges these risk issues? And you know, if you would check with us to find out what's happened with the, I know about 6 or 10 courts applied for the reentry court funding, and I just don't know that any of them got the money yet. You know, and some of those things need to get up and running. They were things that we agreed to a year ago or 2 years ago that we're still kind of poking along, which is why we're not getting the savings. I mean, Senator Nielsen's right, and you know, we need to kind of look at that. But this one is ripe for a lot more discussion, members, I think, and it may entail some of the other items that are before us. And as we move toward sort of the local-state relationship discussions that'll come up later, I think this is the main place for further discussion on that. So all staff, all finance, all LA